Nice.
The Grimgerde is a mobile suit featured in Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans that utilizes the older Valkyria mobile suit frame developed towards the end of the Calamity War. The Grimgerde utilizes the frame's excellent mobility and energy efficiency as a blazing fast melee combatant, utilizing dual swords stored under arm-mounted shields. The high speed and performance of the Grimgerde was notable for having a high handling threshold, meaning only skilled pilots could utilize the Grimgerde effectively. However, the Grimgerde was one of the many prototypes examined after the Calamity War and served as the basis for newer mobile suit frames like the Guy Rail and eventually the Graze frame, which serves as the standard frame of the peacekeeping organization Gallarhorn at the beginning of the show. While gazillions of dollars may have gone into research and production of the later frame designs, thankfully, the Grimgerde itself didn't break my bank. $14 and some change isn't a bad price at all. Picked this up about 7 years ago during Season 1's airing, and it's finally useful. Being a high-grade Gunpla, and Gunpla itself not being super complex, building the kit itself was fairly straightforward. However, I know for a fact that I want to repaint the model as individual pieces. This will mean that I paint every piece unassembled, so to help familiarize myself with the kit, I cut out the pieces in order as listed in the instructions and build each subassembly. Cutting out all of the pieces for each subassembly helped me remember which pieces were for which body part, and by the end of the project I could assemble a Grimgerde just from memory, which means I could be less strict on how I organize my bits. You can get away with a million labels and sticky notes, but I didn't feel like doing that. A good 75% of this project was sanding, so while I sand my sanity away in the background, let's talk about color for this custom. I took to Google for some inspiration for Grimgerde repaints and conversions, and while I saw a good amount of really cool paint jobs, one caught my eye in particular. This Grimgerde, the Grimgerde Calamity, features an asymmetric color scheme and an inner frame that's been recolored to a metallic purple. The metallic purple spills out onto the armor paneling in some spots, but aside from a rotation of the pauldrons and removal of a wing on the head, it's a relatively simple model. Something about the metallic frame really stuck with me when I saw it, so I decided to base my color scheme off of this one. So here's what I came up with. The original model is a mostly red affair with some elements of black paneling on the legs and highlights of white relegated to tubing and the tops of the feet. As longtime viewers might know, I love black and white for armor colors in general, and this actually kinda has its roots in mecha for me. I really like the clean, contrasting colors of white and black, especially on like Gundam and mech armor paneling, and it was the go-to color scheme for a lot of custom color schemes for me in like video games. The one that immediately comes to mind is Warframe, where I accented it with orange, but anytime I had a prime frame, I left it in default colors just because, like, dude, look at this. This is awesome. The inspiration model uses metallic purple for its frame. I take a note from the Strike Freedom and all of the Warframe Prime frames and choose a gold for my inner frame. This gold would be the frame color for the legs, torso, and the left arm, but for the right arm I would swap the panel and frame colors, making the frame white and the panels gold. This really doubles down on the asymmetry that the inspiration model like really drew me in with, and I really fucking love how it ended up. I feel like a lot of people tend to do really basic all one color or symmetrical mecha paint jobs. I like mine to be a little bit asymmetrical in general. As for final touches, I brought the black up to the thighs and put it on the bicep cuff and the panel on the back side of the head. With the legs completely black, it kind of looked like it was wearing stockings or thigh highs, which kind of enhanced the feminine qualities of the suit. I then chose a standard blue for the eye lenses and the various tubes found around the suit. And with all that complete, I laughed at myself, realizing that I had just subconsciously repeated the color scheme from my Space Marine chapter. It's kind of funny. Grimgerde was a named Valkyrie in this play's name, which I'm not going to try to pronounce. Alright, fuck it. D Valkyr? I tried, guys. Anyways, it's a fucking operatic play by the famous German composer Richard. Is it Wagner? Wagner? I think it's Wagner. We'll go with Wagner. But Valkyrie is a Norse mythology where agents of heaven that guided the souls of fallen warriors to the afterlife. My Grimgerde accidentally shares the color scheme of my Space Marines, which are based on Celtic mythology, so maybe I'll give it a Celtic name to match. Hey, Editing John here. Just wanted to say that in retrospect, with the black, white, blue, and gold color scheme, the Grimgerde's paint job actually matches the flag colors for the Irish province of Connacht. I had originally envisioned this model with like a spear or, some kind of like polearm weapon, but looking at the flag for Connacht, I'm very glad I went with one sword in retrospect, because it's like picture perfect. Like, this could not be more fucking perfect. So yeah, this is the Connacht custom. Alright, let me get back on script. With all that sanding and lecturing done and a game plan established, I disassembled the loosely assembled parts. I began to mask off all the parts to prep them for spray painting. To retain the kit's mobility, it's important to make sure any connection spot is masked off or plugged up with sticky tack, as the additional thickness the paint and primer adds can impede the motion of the kit. With most things masked off, I cracked open 3 containers and labeled them with the main colors, white, gold, and black. I threw the blue bits in with the white, since painting the blue over them later will be easiest on a white base coat. With everything sorted, I turned to the hardware. These are bamboo skewers for barbecuing that I cut in half since they were kind of long by default. Next, some alligator clips from Harbor Freight. These are specifically from a variety pack for electrical work, and I got 3 packs for $10, which was more than enough than what I need, but I know they make like proper, just like regular ass alligator clips. These electrical ones were the only ones I could find, but whatever, they still work. The ends are meant to be clamped over electrical wire, but they make the perfect little clip for holding on to model kits when you put them at the end of a skewer. I just made sure to jam the bamboo skewer in and close them up tightly with some pliers. An hour's work got me more than enough clips for this entire kit. I get to attaching all the parts to the ends of the clips. The green foam disc on my desk is just a circular block of that really kind of crappy floral foam. I grabbed it while getting groceries at Walmart. It was like $3 and was kind of the pro gamer move for this project. I've used various shapes of foam to hold skewers in the past, but just a small, flat little bit of foam really goes a long way in holding these skewers upright. In the past, I used a cone. Don't use a cone. I don't know what the fuck I was thinking. And now began the roller coaster of pain. My local forecast had rain for the whole previous week and the whole week going forward. Any patch of clear weather was assaulted by close to 100% humidity because, unfortunately for me, I live in a fucking swamp and this entire state sucks. Any bit of progress I got came from quickly spray priming outdoors just before the rain kicked up, as it was for some reason slightly less humid before it fucking poured. I sat vigilantly, waiting for a chance I could get to pounce and spray my project, sometimes in less than ideal conditions. I tell you, 3 a.m. right before the storm hit is a really bad time to find out that the light on the back porch just burned out. Eventually I got everything primed, but enough was enough. I love me a woman who can boss me around, but mommy dommy nature had interfered with my tiny plastic robots for far too long, and so I assembled what I can only describe as the most ghetto airbrush setup I've ever seen. Let's meet the team. Number 1, a cheap air compressor from Harbor Freight. Got it as a Christmas gift about 7 years ago. 2, a Masters G22 airbrush given to me by a kind anonymous soul in a secret Santa trade. And finally, a $5 air filter covering a $20 bathroom exhaust fan. All contained in an old cardboard box we kept around the house because... While normally I don't have a spot for a permanent airbrush setup, the living room had just recently been cleared out, and so my perfect opportunity to set up, learn, master, and use the airbrush had finally come. I did the whole shebang. I thinned the paint, I mixed it, shot it at a test piece, checked that the fan caught the particulates. The gears of this ancient gear golem were in motion, so it was time to paint the gear town red, or in this case white. And so the airbrushing began, spirits high and big iron on my hip, looking to cover up any hints of Texas red left on the model. However, tragedy soon struck. While spraying, I noticed that my paint was pooling on the pieces. And after a little troubleshooting, it became apparent that the pressure coming out of my airbrush was just monstrously high, which worked for the large test piece but was just slaughtering my smaller bits. At first I thought it was the thinning ratio of the paint, or sometimes my distances that I was holding the brush, but the pressure problem became more apparent as I ruled things out. And then, the killing blow. My old ass, dinky ass, Harbor Freight looking ass air compressor had no pressure modulation. At first I thought, I don't use this thing, I'm not the best at it, so I'll look in the manual and see if I'm missing like an obvious switch. But no, the manual states that this pump runs at a consistent 50 psi at all times, refilling when it drops under 46 psi. So there it was. The pressure was just way too high to have any sort of control over it. An Airbrushing Pro may have been able to work around this somehow, and maybe it is a simple, something I'm just overlooking, but I'm not an Airbrush Pro. This is the first time I had this whole thing set up. While this didn't kill my motivation to learn this tool in the long run, I didn't have the luxury of time, nor the motivation to go out and buy another, more obvious air pump, or hell, just the general experience to identify and implement an alternative. Eventually, I just had to admit defeat for now and throw in the gloves. So I got my ass back outside to spray. I tell you, there's nothing more fun than breaking out in a full body sweat, getting drenched after 10 minutes of standing completely still. Plus the fucking mosquitoes, man. They don't bother me normally when I work outside, but standing still in the backyard? Shit, dude, I must have looked like a fucking golden corral to these dudes. My legs still itch, and it's been a week. But eventually, it all gets sprayed. It's all sitting there curing and drying. For now, I turned my attention to identifying what kind of paints I had actually been spraying. For some reason, none of my paints were labeled as acrylic, lacquer, and enamel, so I took to testing different solvents and thinners on the clippers I had oversprayed onto. This was important, as when I went to panel line, I didn't want to clean up the panel lining with a solvent that would dissolve the paint layer under it. I determined that the white gloss paint was at the very least not enamel, which allowed me to use my Tamiya panel liners, and the gold spray paint was enamel, meaning I opted to use recess shading with a precision brush and some Agrax Earthshade. Some pieces benefited from rescribing the recesses before the panel line went down, but otherwise it was a matter of laying it all down, then cleaning it in an assembly line of sorts. It's important when you're panel lining to wait about 10 minutes after you apply it. This will give the panel liner a chance to dry before you swab it up. If you try to clean it while wet, you'll just smear it all over the place, which is no bueno. While examining the pieces, I noticed that my gloss black enamel spray had gotten really sticky. It was sticky after 2 days of drying and curing, so I have no clue what happened here. I've used this can on a previous project, but I don't know, maybe it just, I have no clue. Luckily I had a bottle of enamel thinner that I could use to scrub off all the goop, allowing me to just use black primer with some matte varnish for my black components. Unfortunately, by the time I had finished, the whole room smelled like a goddamn nail salon, and I had left the door closed, so I ended up with a gnarly ass headache. Use a respirator, or just open the door if you do this. Just be smarter than me. I know it's not a high bar, but can you do that for me? Thanks. At this point, final assembly was just around the corner. However, after this project had doubled its work time on my ass, and me generally tired of spray painting things, I just said fuck it. The black parts had a light coating of matte varnish applied to them, which left a subtle spotting on them, which I intended to re-varnish and fix, but given the previous, fuck it initiative, I just started assembling it. This is where that intimate familiarity of the parts and pieces I acquired during assembly came in handy, as the model went back together super smoothly. The range of motion was also preserved perfectly thanks to the careful masking work I did before painting, which also included freehand painting all the blue components as well. One last adjustment to the model before painting the weapon was adding these 7-inch long strips of blue ribbon underneath the armor skirting. Not only did this help hide the incomplete underside of these waist panels, but I felt like it was a nice decorative element that reintroduces and redistributes the blue to other parts of the model. I simply cut a small slit into the ribbon, slipped it over the ball joints, and the whole ribbon was held in place just by the armor attaching onto it. And finally, the sword. While I would love to sit here and do a nice non-metallic metal finish on the sword, I decided to go for my signature tired of this project and want a quick result that looks distinct effect, and sponge on a galaxy-like effect on the blade. Even though it's quick, easy, and rooted in laziness, I'm growing really fond of the galaxy style blade more and more as time goes on. Could it be better? Well, the whole project could be. But it serves its purpose as an eye-catching power sword effect, a great focal point for what I considered one of my favorite Gunpla customs. Yep, and that's the whole model. If you're new to this channel, which a lot of people probably are from that Warhammer Gunpla guide series I've done, this is the part of the video where I ramble into the mic with no script. I'm looking at my script, and my only note is do the outro. So that's kind of how things go around here. But yeah, man, I really like how this model came out, but holy shit, it was just such a headache to try to deal with the weather. I have never had such stronger motivation to get an airbrush as I had this past week. But just due to my living situation here, it's not super feasible to just have a dedicated spot for it, which is its own headache, but one step at a time. And normally I wouldn't mind spray painting all this stuff, but man, it seemed like every can of spray paint I had messed up somehow. You can kind of tell on the left pauldron, the white one, that it's just a very slight hint of red peeking through the white, and I have no idea why. I painted it just the same as the other pieces that you're seeing. It's just that one piece, for some reason, just has red showing through, and I don't know. I don't get it. And while I would love to sit here and spend the rest of eternity trying to fix it, I got things to do. So, well, even though it gave me a massive headache, I still really love how this model came out. I also kind of really like how the color scheme ended up perfectly matching the flag for a province in Ireland, because my Space Marines are Irish and this is Irish, and I don't know. It wasn't planned at all, but I really like when small little accidents like that kind of line up. Although, I gotta be careful. At this point, someone's gonna accuse me of being the Irish equivalent of a weeaboo. Ireboo? I don't know. So yeah, this is the first Gunpla custom for this channel, and it's certainly not going to be the last, but after the guide series, really kicked off, a lot of people wanted to see me kind of quickly dip into Gunpla, and that's fine. I don't mind pushing off some projects a little bit to, if there's an interest, I'll try to work towards it. But yeah, it's not going to be the last Gunpla. It's probably going to be my last for a while, just because of all this spray painting headache bullshit. But yeah, there are some that I'd really like to do. I got to do my own Zaku. That seems like a must. I really want to do a High Gog. I want to do some more Iron-Blooded kit bashes. I've had a diorama idea for G Gundam in mind for years at this point, and I'd love to get around to do that. But I have a loose schedule for this channel, and I try to follow it, but you know, we'll see what kind of, like, I've got like my ideas board, and then I've got like the gonna get to it ideas board that kind of draws from it. So like a list of 10 things narrowed down to about 3, and I kind of just pick one from there. But I've pushed off a Kill Team project long enough, so that's probably what's going to come up next. And then the 1,000 subscriber Chaos Knight conversion will just happen when it happens. Like, I put an order in for my recast, but it's just a matter of waiting for it to ship, because there's no way in hell I'm spending $190 on a fucking Chaos Knight when I can order a recast for like $80 after shipping. Where I had a bigger channel and had dedicated income, then yeah, I would just go and pick one up and immediately start working on it. But given my limited budget, I'll fall back on the words of the ancient philosophers: shop smart, shop smart. Alright, 4-minute ramble. That might be a new record for me. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the custom as much as I enjoyed being done with it. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Talk to you later.